We got a new Star Wars movie just around the corner. Solo, a Star Wars story. And as always, when a new Star Wars movie is coming out, Sean Chandler joins me to talk Star Wars. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and as we are now less than a week away from Solo, a Star Wars story, it is time to uphold a time-honored tradition and do a theological analysis of a Star Wars movie going before a Star Wars movie. And the one who always joins me for those, Sean Chandler of Sean Chandler Talks About, is here right now. How you doing, Sean?
I am doing great. I actually was sick over the weekend, so I'm feeling amazing now, especially compared to how I was feeling before. And for you guys watching, this is the first video I've ever shot on a new set, so that's exciting. And I'm talking Star Wars theologically with you, so it's a good day.
It is a good day. Sean, tell us a little bit about your channel and where they can find you.
My name is Sean Chandler, and I'm over at Sean Chandler Talks About. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, but the key thing is I like to talk movies with you guys, so I try to be real active in the comment section and make lots of friends over here, and that's why I'm very excited to talk with you today.
This is not going to go the way you think.
I think the first time I watched this that kept me more on the positive side was this theological undertone, because, you know, I do this now on my channel, so now when I watch movies, I look for it. And so when I was watching this movie, and because, like, I've always found that with Star Wars. Star Wars is one of those that is so easy to dig deep into theologically, and so, of course, I was looking for it in this one, and I found it. And I think just because of what I found, it's kept me more of the positive side. But before I talk about what I saw in this movie, deep and theological, I'm going to kick it over to you, Sean, and kick us off with this theological conversation here.
Well, I think the thing about it that they take it in a very interesting direction is inherent to most of Star Wars has been a very clear cut in the middle, good, bad, light, dark, Sith, Jedi. I mean, very much binary view of the Force, of good and evil. And the sort of the good does good things, the bad does bad things. And what this movie tried to do is explore this idea of broken heroes. And what do you do when, Poe Dameron has a good side to him, but he's making bad choices? What do you do when Luke made bad choices and he's a broken legend that doesn't know what to do and just thinks, I need to sit it out for the rest of the time? And, you kind of go through the whole story, and all these characters are broken, and where they're at, they're all making mistakes, and they're still the heroes. They're still the good guys. And this is very kind of profound stuff, because then you take that and look at the Bible, and everyone used in the Bible is so broken. Everyone, that's such a clear picture of what really God does and what the gospel is of God using very broken people that have huge fundamental flaws that can't do it on their own. The legends aren't just these legends that are perfect. That's not the way it works. And this movie very much kind of shows that, of picture of that.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree with that. It's funny because when I was watching this movie, when Poe was making the choices he was making, I remember at first, like, I was on Poe's side because I was really mad, like, do they have a plan? And why are they just so stoic and quiet? And here's Leia, she's unconscious in a coma. So it's like, what's going on here? So at first I'm like, yeah, Poe, take action because you're all in trouble and nobody's doing anything. So you need to take action. You need to save these people. But what an interesting twist that they had a plan and Poe Dameron screwed it up. Like, if Poe hadn't done what he had done, all those ships might have, I mean, we don't know for sure, but they might have made it safely down to that planet without being noticed. At least there was a greater chance if Poe didn't make the choices that he made. But then you could flip-flop that argument because, after it's over, it's like,
why didn't they tell him?
Exactly. And so it's interesting because it's almost like a divide between the old generation and the young. It's like what we see today, like, you hear older people scoff, oh, those millennials. And then you have the millennials going, those old people, they're so unchangeable. But the reality is we need each other's experience to balance each other out so that we could go forward the right direction.
Yes, well, and I think that's somewhat for me in the way it plays out felt like a story issue in it, because you just kind of look at Like, why wouldn't they tell Poe more information? Especially as you know, he's about to send Finn and a code breaker over there that have information. If you have a plan, you need to tell them so those people don't fly onto the First Order ship with information that they can be tortured out of them or their code breaker can give up. Like this is information they should have passed along. There's not a reason in the movie given for why they don't, other than just for the story to happen, or she's stubborn, or sort of things like that. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like, you could look at it and be like, the frustration of the way that we interact with one another, and whether it's old, new, or just different styles of communication, the different ways people interact with one another. Like, if we would just see things from the other person's perspective, if we could just communicate better to like bridge that gap, we'd all be better. It would help all of us along the way. And you should look at this situation being like, if they would just speak each other's language, if they would just communicate properly, all of this goes better.
Maybe that's the frustrating thing about this Star Wars movie. You know, we hold Star Wars so high. It's this great example of what we ought to be, but now we're looking at Star Wars and everybody's broken. They're not communicating right, and huge, not small, huge mistakes are being made. And it could add to that disappointment we feel when we watch this, because instead of seeing what we want to be, we're seeing, but that's where I am.
So I guess, continue on in there, you get little moments of redemption and growth as people kind of have their moments as you kind of move into the latter half of the movie. And so then you have Poe having this final charge where he is making his charge, and it seems like he's being just as reckless as he's been the whole movie. Like, I have to act, I have to go do this, we got to act. And then he has this moment in it of realizing, I should probably learn from what I've seen before. And pauses and realizes, no, we're just going to die if we do this. This isn't going to work. And so you have growth in that. And then you have Luke has his moment where he decides, I'm going to go into action. I'm going to act. And it's not what we're expecting. It's not necessarily the Luke showing up and plowing down. Sorry about that. Plowing down 1,000 stormtroopers or something like that. But what it is it's an older, wiser Luke knowing what he can do and knowing what needs to be done for the future to happen. And so it has growth throughout it and little redemptive moments for people, which, once again, going back to biblically speaking, that we have these moments where we could fail horribly, and then we get more moments to grow, change, and find redemption on the other side.
Yeah. And that's something I think this movie did a really good job of, and I couldn't have summed it up better than you did. We got to watch all of their mistakes, but it was cool because at the end, they really did learn. Like, all of them learned and grew. Leia backed off and let Poe take more of a leadership position, and Poe learned from all of his mistakes how many lives are in the palm of his hand as a leader and the wiser choices he has to make. So when I was watching this movie, one of the things that really stuck out to me is Luke Skywalker and the Force. And it's the same thing that happened when I was watching Empire Strikes Back, because I feel like in Empire Strikes Back, the whole Luke and Yoda trainings where we learned so much about the Force and the Jedi and what they're supposed to believe. But what was really interesting, and you said it earlier, now that we have Luke, a broken man, a broken legend, because he committed a huge sin. I mean, one small act where out of fear he ignited his lightsaber and almost took out his nephew because he sensed the darkness. And because of that one tiny act, his world came crumbling down, and him training that next generation of Jedi, it came to an end, and it pushed his nephew deeper into the darkness that he saw. So it's interesting to see that Luke is now living in the guilt because of that, but he's also had a little bit of a revelation, kind of being alone and secluded on that island, and even detaching himself from the Force, because through his mistake and through what he did, he saw something that I guess no other Jedi saw before. The Jedi had it wrong. See, there's the Force, and then there's the religion they built around the Force. And so they built up this religion full of these laws, full of these rules. You can't love, you can't feel, you can't have emotions, you can't have attachments, you can't have any of this, because all of that, it will compromise you. And because it will compromise you, well, then you just can't have it. But what do the Jedi keep looking for? They keep looking for the prophecy of balance in the Force. I mean, what do they think that is? You have the Sith on the one side, feel everything and ruled by their emotions. You have the Jedi on the other, cutting all of that off. What do you think the prophecy means by balance in the Force? I mean, and so when the prophecy comes, they so didn't understand it, they made an enemy out of Anakin Skywalker, who was supposed to be the guy who brought them this balance. They alienated him, they pushed him out, and they made him an enemy. But now we're looking at Luke Skywalker on this island who sees this, who now comes to an understanding the Force is real. The Force is powerful. We can have a relationship with the Force, and that relationship will guide us. It will strengthen us. It will do everything Master Yoda told me it will do. But we filled it up with so many rules, it's inaccessible now. Like, people can't get to the Force. In fact, the Jedi think the Force is theirs. So how did the first Jedi get it? Nobody's asking that question. So it's interesting where Luke talks about in their hubris, they thought that the Force was theirs. In their hubris, they thought their rules and their regulations were the right way to go. But in reality, it was the religion they made out of the truth that was their downfall and why the Jedi Temple was not standing. And I feel that way when we look at Christianity. God is real. Jesus is real. The Bible is real. But so many times we take this religion out of it and we build all these unnecessary laws and rules and weirdness around it, and it becomes something inaccessible. And instead, what we're supposed to have is this relationship with God, and it's that relationship with God, not some religion that changes us and changes the world. And so, like, I just thought that was so well reflected with Luke, and everything with Luke I loved because of that, because of his journey to discover the Force for what the Force was, rather than his journey to dive into religion.
Yeah, that's very, very good take on that. I hadn't even thought about it in that way. Yeah, that was good. That was a good one. But that's so true. The way that it's so natural that once we think we've got it figured out, we start building our systems to help us to better engage God or the Force in their case. We have our systems, and it's all makes sense. It's not that the system's bad. It's not that it's evil, but then we make that such the priority. We make that the focus, and we put our foot in all the wrong places, and that's where people start to get burned by it. And so I was going to loop back to something you said before about Luke, where you kind of started off, and you were talking about where Luke almost has this moment where he's going to kill his nephew. And you just think, how far off has Luke gone that would happen? And just, in my mind, I was just thinking about, having spent so much time in the church, of the times when the church fails to have grace in a situation, and it gets locked in on the rules, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, and someone does something wrong, and the church responds with the hammer, and the church responds with judgment, and the church comes at them, and it forgets that at the center of the gospel is that we're all broken. We've all messed up. We've all made big mistakes. We all are in need of gospel and grace and Jesus and the cross, and instead they respond with the hammer. When they do that to people, those are the people that leave the church, and they've got a whopper of a tale to tell. And the church is like this, the church is like this, and they're the people that go out there. The church is so judgmental, and they did this, and they kicked me out I needed them, I went to them, and I'd messed up, and this is how they responded, and they are burned for life. And you watch this movie, and what's the case? That Kylo is a lost youth filled with things that he doesn't know what to do with. He's heading in the wrong direction, and the person that he values most, that he's gone to for help, comes at him with the hammer, not grace. And what's the response? He turns into a Sith Lord and starts being very evil and kills his father in the end. Boom, that's bad. But it's the same thing. Like, and I make that silly analogy, but at the same time, it's not silly when it's someone you know, and it's that coworker that was just when they were young and they got burned. And we all know so many people like that, or I don't know all the details of your story. Maybe that's a little piece of your story. I haven't had too much of that type of story in my own, but we've all had little moments of it.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been burned by, religiosity and some of the stupidity that comes with that. I mean, never burned to the point that I walked away from my faith, because thankfully my family, they kept me on a firm foundation there, and that was pretty awesome. But, there's just those times where it happens. You just get burned. But then as you get older, you just realize, well, that's just the world. I mean, the church isn't perfect. It's run by broken people. So then we got to learn to accept that they're broken and have grace for them. And they got to learn we're broken and have grace for us. It's like this circle of grace that has to keep going on and on. The other thing that was really interesting to me about Luke when he raised the lightsaber to his nephew, he was repeating the sins of his father. Because Anakin had a vision of his wife dying. And instead of doing what he should have done, which was stay by her side and love her, he tried to take control himself and became a Sith Lord. And that actually led to the fulfillment of the dark vision. So Luke, in his fear, ignited a lightsaber when he had a vision, which the point of the vision was to give him the warning so that he could show the compassion. Instead, he ignited a lightsaber in his fear and drove his nephew to the darkness. So it's really kind of an interesting thing when you look at it that way. It's just like, gosh dang it. Kylo needs some grace, and Kylo needs to give Luke some grace, and it's amazing how that circle works.
Yep. Yeah, well, and that's to do the flip side to that one of, people very frequently talk about the broken and how the sinners, they need grace poured onto them, and the church tends to be judgmental towards them. And that's a big push in the discussion about how the church is acting wrong and all the ways in which the church is, using politics or whatever to try and push their agenda, and how there's a lack of grace in the church. The flip side, though, is that the self-righteous, the Pharisees, and whether the religious need grace as well, because they're just the exact same way. And it's a different form of sin. It's a very prideful in its own arrogance and its lack of love. But it's the flip. It's the same thing. We all need to give each other grace. Both Luke to his student that's falling into darkness, and the student falling into darkness. Flip side, you should give grace to his teacher that, tried to kill him. And that's just kind of like the nature of all of it, that all of us, if all of us would realize we're broken, sinners in need of a savior, in need of grace, that would go well for all of us.
Oh, it really would. The whole attitude that would change if we would just take a deep breath, take 3 steps back, and give each other that grace that none of us deserves, but give it to each other anyway. That would be quite an amazing thing. Well, as we close, let's end it with this real fast, Sean. Are you looking forward to Solo?
I've come around. I'm getting quite excited for Solo now. So I've talked about many times over on my channel that I wasn't excited when they announced it. And then all the kind of behind the scenes stuff made me nervous about it. And then the trailers didn't wow me. I mean, I dug them, but they didn't wow me. But as we're like a few weeks out, I'm like, I'm sure I'm going to have a good time with this one. All that stuff about, why are we doing a Han Solo movie? It just seems kind of, bored. Like, there's no reason for me to be kind of worked up about some of that stuff. I know I'm going to have a good time with it. So why not just get excited? So I've been getting pretty excited probably the last 2 or 3 weeks where I've been like, this is going to be pretty cool. And depending on how appropriate it is, I can possibly take my son to go see it. So that probably is helping me be like, this could be cool. This could be real cool for me.
I'm in the phase where I still need to figure out how to give it some grace, because I'm going to see it. And like you, I think when I see it, I'm going to have fun with it, because the movie itself doesn't look like a bad movie. It's just, why? Like, I'm still trying to, I can't stop asking myself why. Why not go back 2,000 years in Jedi past and show us other stuff? Why are we already have a young Han Solo, but I'm trying to stop arguing that, because I'm going to be there anyway on opening night. I already got my tickets, so it's like, what am I complaining about? I'm going to be there, so, I'm hoping it's good too, and I don't know, overall the cast looks pretty cool, so it looks like it has the potential to be a really fun heist Star Wars movie.
Right, and I hope they find that sweet space in there to tell a roguish tale about some criminals doing criminal activity inside of the Star Wars world that we haven't seen a story like this before. Certainly not with this type of budget, live action, or anything like that. So there's the opportunity to do something really cool and just have a fun adventure where you don't have the weight of trying to tell the Skywalker journey and meta myth and all that stuff, the Joseph Campbell type things they have to do with the episodes, or trying to do Rogue One where you know it's going to have this real sad ending. This one you can just tell a fun adventure about a set of great, charismatic, fun characters. So there's a lot of potential. At the same time, totally on the same page with you of why? Like, there's questions I don't want the answers to because they don't add anything showing me certain things. Like, showing him playing cards and winning the Millennium Falcon and things like that. Like, that's doesn't add anything. There's certain allure to the fact of like, how much of this is true? How much is he just like a guy that talks himself up, and always can pull it off in the end? Like, there's all sorts of things about it that I like the mystery surrounding him, but I'm sure it'll be fun. And Ron Howard, I trust Ron Howard. Kathleen Kennedy, not so much. Lord and Miller, were always a weird pick for me. That always seemed like that was never going to work. But Ron Howard, if they just announced Ron Howard from the get-go, I think I'd be like, yeah, Ron Howard, totally safe pick. He's a safe pick because he's an obvious pick. He's an obvious pick because he's a good pick. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited. So I'm trying to focus on all of that stuff.
Awesome. Well, what do you guys think? Are you guys excited for Solo, a Star Wars story? When you watch The Last Jedi, what kind of messages do you see buried within? Be sure to have a conversation with us about that in the comments. Sean, one more time, tell us about your channel and where to find you.
You can find me at Sean Chandler Talks About. I do lots of movie reviews, lots of ranking videos, trailer reactions for the big trailers. I'm over on Twitter at Kirk Never Died. Kirk Never Died over on Twitter. Real interactive with people over there as well, because that's the key thing. I want to talk movies with you.
Awesome. So go over there, subscribe to his channel if you haven't already, like a lot of his videos. Like, just go through and just hit like because they're awesome and you'll love watching them and joining in that conversation. And make sure you like and share this video as well and hit the subscribe button here. I'm Durbin.
I'm Sean.
Thanks for checking out Durbania.